it must be bluntly said that woke is becoming a joke, a bad joke. The slogan we RevComs have raised, "You think you're woke, but you're sleepwalking through a nightmare," captures something very important. But it needs to be added that this wokeness, with its evading of and diversion from the real struggle that needs to be waged, and its substituting of word changing and cancel culture in place of this struggle, is actually contributing to and furthering this nightmare.
A nightmare. People, you are woking yourselves and humanity off a cliff into a brutal world of horrific, vicious oppression and repression that will rival the ugly foundation of this country in the genocide of the native peoples, in slavery, lynching, and mass incarceration, into a culture of rape, degradation, and the oppression of women. All this, if there even is a world of hurt, because the monsters that rule this capitalist imperialist system we live under are destroying the environment and are engaging in a dangerous game that threatens war which could spin into oblivion. Yet, too many who hate this are obsessed and possessed with trivial and harmful pursuits. A self-absorption that disregards simple things like getting yourself vaccinated to protect yourself and others against a pandemic that you believe is so make-believe that it has taken over 5 million lives. A self-absorption that wallows in a selfie culture of self-care when the world literally cries out if you have the ears and the eyes to hear and see what is all around us. A self-absorption that leads to sniping and snarking and canceling and fighting with each other. A self-absorption that settles for finding your little place in a world that's on the brink. A self-absorption that deludes itself that there is a way to painless progress and which tries to drag the rest of us along with you. A self-absorption that leads you to think that the deadly rivalry with the crew next block over is anything more than the two of you carrying out our oppressors' genocidal plans. A self-absorption that leads you to endure the shit of this world by looking for salvation in a heaven that doesn't exist instead of fighting for liberation in the world that does. To think that the same old oppression carried out by black or brown or female faces in high places who just because they look like you will make this system any less oppressive. The thing is, we won't go there and we won't let you or anyone else take us or lead humanity off of that cliff, no. We need a real revolution to fight for the emancipation of all humanity. Humanity really does stand on a precipice. There is a terrible future that advances by the day. But there is a call that has been sounded for a revolutionary way out of this rapidly cascading catastrophe to a liberating future. A way to tear up the roots of what gives rise to this terrible future that the world is careening to. That road is a real revolution for the emancipation of humanity. The words that opened this program today from the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian, are from a major essay that calls for that positive future. Something terrible or something truly emancipating. Profound crisis, deepening divisions, the looming possibility of civil war, and the revolution that is urgently needed. A necessary foundation, a basic roadmap for this revolution. This is the guide for this moment. If you yearn for a just world, if you have a heart to act and to fight for a world fit for people all over the world to flourish in, if you have the integrity to follow your convictions, read this work by Bob Avakian, BA at revcom.us. My name is Andy Zee. I'm the host of the R&L show, and you are watching that show right now. And today is February 3rd, 2022, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. We're coming hard at the ways of thinking and acting that all those who should be raising hell and getting with the revolution are caught up in, that leads them to turn away from, and worse, lead others to turn away from a fight for real liberation that could really be possible. And let me be clear, this comes not out of arrogance or malice, but from a real world, objective, scientific understanding of the problem we face and the real solution. Bob Avakian says at the beginning of this talk that we are coming strong at all this harmful nonsense, quote, not out of a sense that people are so deeply caught up in, that they cannot break with, ways of thinking and acting which serve to perpetuate their own oppression and degradation. No, we do this precisely out of the understanding that people not only need to, but they can make a profound break with this, that they can radically change themselves as part of and in the process of radically changing the world in an emancipating way. So what is the situation we face? Why are we saying that revolution is possible in this moment? In a pamphlet that the RevComs put out last spring, a declaration, a call to get organized now for a real revolution, we say,
this is one of those rare times and circumstances when revolution becomes possible. Not just because this system is always a horror, but because the crisis and deep divisions in society now can only be resolved through radical means of one kind or another. Either radically reactionary, murderously oppressive and destructive means, or radically emancipating, revolutionary means. Those who have ruled over us for so long with their Republican and Democratic parties are now caught up in bitterly fighting each other over how to hold this country together, keep this system going, enforce its rule over the people it exploits and oppresses, and maintain this country as the world's top dog oppressive power. The Republicans are moving to exercise this rule through fascism, discarding the pretense of democracy for all, relying on naked brutality and trampling on people's rights to enforce undisguised, aggressive male supremacy.
You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy.
White supremacy, xenophobia, hatred of foreigners, and the persecution of immigrants, especially from non-white countries, and crude America First chauvinism. The Democrats are trying to keep things together with more disguise and deception, with the claim that what exists in this country is a great democracy representing the will of the people.
Opening doors of opportunity, guaranteeing some more fairness and justice. That's the essence of America.
And for this reason, it deserves to be and needs to be the most powerful force in the world.
I will never hesitate to use force to defend the vital interests of America, the American people.
But in reality, both of these ruling class parties are working to maintain the violent, oppressive power, the dictatorship of this capitalist imperialist system, with all the horrors for humanity this involves.
The declaration call goes on to say, quote, this could lead to something very bad or something very good if we act in the way we need to in these rare circumstances and fight to take things where they need to go. To get where we need to go, to bring forward and to organize thousands and then millions of people into the ranks of a movement for a real revolution, to impact the whole country so that millions more are won to be favorable to this revolution, we need to transform. We need to change the thinking of millions of people in the process of changing the world. To this purpose, we begin and are framing today's show with a recent challenge from Bob Avakian that was published on our website, revcom.us, on January 24th, which you can still find on the home page of our website. The title is, In the Light of the Urgency Spoken to, in Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, a Renewed Challenge, Searching for an Honest Liberal or Progressive.
In light of the urgency spoken to in Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, a renewed challenge, searching for an honest liberal or progressive, by Bob Avakian. There is the story about how in ancient Greece, a philosopher named Diogenes wandered over a wide territory with a lantern to light his way, searching for one honest man. Today, I'm searching for an honest liberal or progressive. More specifically, last year, I issued a challenge to Bill Maher, who continues to bray about how this is supposedly a great country.
We're not the bad guys.
Here, I'm issuing an updated version of this challenge for all the liberals and progressives who say they care about justice and are seriously concerned about the situation and the future facing humanity, but still are clinging to the notion that there is something special, something especially good about this country, even while they may admit that it has many faults. All those liberals and progressives who, in any case, say that this system we live under should be preserved while we work to overcome its faults, and that it is not necessary and not a good idea to overthrow this system and bring into being a radically different system. Here is the challenge. Go to the website revcom.us and read the following. This recent major work of mine, Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, Profound Crises, Deepening Divisions, the Looming Possibility of Civil War, and the Revolution that is Urgently Needed, a Necessary Foundation, a Basic Roadmap for This Revolution, the American Crime Series. These papers by Raymond Latta, The Industrialization of Sexual Exploitation, Imperialist Globalization, and the Descent into Hell, and Imperialist Parasitism and Class Social Recomposition in the U.S. from the 1970s to today, an exploration of trends and changes. And let me call your attention to this astounding and horrific fact. Because of the way the world is dominated by this system of capitalism imperialism, in the Third World, Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, tens of millions of children die every decade from starvation and preventable disease. To put this in an even larger perspective, because of conditions ultimately rooted in and enforced by this system of capitalism imperialism, just in the lifetime of someone 20 years old, the number of children in the Third World who have needlessly died from starvation and preventable disease is at least 100 million. And for anyone 75 or older, that number is 350 million, greater than the entire population of this country. So here again is the challenge. Seriously confronting the reality captured in the works and facts I have referred to here. Try to make the case that this is a great country and great system. And see if you can explain why this system should be preserved in any form. Or, failing that, acknowledge that it is true that we need an actual revolution to overthrow this whole system and bring a radically different and much better system and world into being. Do any of you have the integrity and concern for humanity to take up this challenge? We shall see.
To help you grab hold of your integrity and concern for humanity and to take up this challenge, we present today's RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. Picking up on the challenge and theme of looking for an honest liberal, we're going to get into the struggle around abortion rights. And to get into this, I want to welcome my co-host, Sunsara Taylor, who's in New York City, but is with us via the miracle of Zoom. How are you, Sunsara? Welcome back.
Andy, it's really good to see you and to be with you, and I'm doing well. Thank you.
Sonny, over the last several weeks, we've been covering on our show, the RNL show, the emergency facing abortion rights, where this fundamental right of women could be overturned by the Supreme Court, likely this spring, or at least it'll be gutted. And you've been part of initiating a movement and issued a statement. The organization is called RiseUpForAbortionRights.org. And this statement that you put out, that a few hundred people have signed, including some people who've been active in women's rights for a long time, was titled, "We Refuse to Let the Supreme Court Deny Women's Humanity and Decimate Their Rights." We call on everyone to join us in fighting for abortion on demand and without apology. So as we've been discussing, this is a major assault on the rights and the lives of women. Yet, as we've also been getting into in the RNL show, at this very moment, instead of standing up and mobilizing people to fight the attack, the major leaders of the so-called women's movements, the official women's movement, have been capitulating in advance. Instead of fighting against the loss of abortion rights nationally, they're preparing for it. But that is not all. Now, many of the so-called woke folk are not just capitulating to this, they're objectively fighting to lead others to do so through outrageously erasing women from the struggle for abortion. In fact, these days you can even get canceled for even using the word women. In relation to abortion, Sunsara, what's going on with this?
Well, Andy, first of all, I want to start with what you said, that this attack on abortion, which is an emergency, it's an absolute emergency where the Supreme Court is poised to tear this right away from women and devastate the lives of millions and millions of women and girls and future generations, is an assault on women. It's an assault on half of humanity that is female. Denying women the right to abortion forces women to have children against their will, and it is a form of violence against women. It devastates women's lives. It shatters their dreams. It forecloses their lives. It forces young women to drop out of school or to lose their jobs. It forces women of all ages into poverty or traps them in abusive relationships. And it hangs like a terror and a threat over all women. The idea that you could be forced to have a child against your will. It is true when we say forced motherhood is female enslavement. And this assault needs to be fought and it needs to be defeated, which is why we forged this group, myself and others, riseupfораbortionrights.org. And we're calling on people and organizing people to get into the streets to defeat this assault, including on International Women's Day, March 8th, coming up very soon. And we want people to get involved in organizing with us for that. And so, like you said, we put out a statement that begins, "We refuse to let the Supreme Court deny women's humanity and decimate their rights." And the biggest objection we've gotten, actually, in taking this out, I have to tell you, it is not even from the fascists yet. It is from these so-called woke folk who are coming at us and they're saying, well, why are you talking about women? And they're accusing us of being exclusionary of trans people. Now, a lot of viewers might be scratching their heads and saying, well, I don't get this. Of course, the attack on abortion is an attack on women. And people thinking that are correct. But the logic of this woke folk reasoning goes like this. There are some people who can get pregnant and need abortions who do not identify as women. For example, trans men who were female and transitioned to male, and many of them still have female reproductive organs, can get pregnant and need an abortion. And so it is true, trans people also need abortions, and that should be defended, and that's very important. But by this logic, it's extended in a very ludicrous and harmful way to say that by speaking of women being under attack, this is somehow excluding trans people. And this is not just something we've encountered when we put this statement out. This has been building for a while. I want to give an example, and it's one that Bob Avakian gives in the major talk that he did, Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating. He talks about how after Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Supreme Court justice, who was really a defender of abortion rights on the Supreme Court, after she died about 1.5 years ago, the ACLU put out a tweet that quoted her, except that it didn't quote her. It really butchered a quote from her. So this is a statement. I want to read it to you. That Ruth Bader Ginsburg actually said. She said, "The decision whether or not to bear a child is central to a woman's life, to her well-being and dignity. It is a decision she must make for herself. When government controls that decision for her, she is being treated as less than a fully adult human responsible for her own choices." And now I want to read to you the butchered, gutted, distorted version that the ACLU put out, where they took out the word woman. They said, "The decision whether or not to bear a child is central to a person's life and to their well-being and dignity. When the government controls that decision for people, they are being treated as less than fully adult humans responsible for their own choices." And this completely erases women. And the fact that this assault is about male domination over women and control over women. And this has continued. The ACLU was actually compelled to make an apology for this. But this dynamic of erasing women in the name of inclusion for trans people has continued. And just last month, a major statement was put out by several major organizations in the so-called pro-choice movement that details a whole list of demands. And you go through it. Never once do they mention women. They don't mention girls. They don't talk about patriarchy. Instead, they just speak in completely neutral terms about every individual's right to so-called bodily autonomy. And really, as you said, at this moment when abortion and women are under assault as never before, they are completely hiding this reality and doing harm by obscuring it and actually disarming people who need to be aroused to fight this. So this is the situation that we face.
Well, exactly, because this kind of woke idiocy and erasing women from the battle here, and who are going to be in their millions impacted by this, half of humanity in this country, and because this is doing so much harm, and because the stakes are so high, and there's confusion around it, as well as just outrageous misleadership here. Bob Avakian this week put out a very powerful and a very precise and concentrated article that cuts through all the bullshit on this that we're going to play for you now. And it's going to be read by a member of the RNL crew. It's called The Fight for Abortion Rights and the Emancipation of Women by Bob Avakian.
The Fight for Abortion Rights and the Emancipation of Women by Bob Avakian. The essential question at stake, with the escalating attack on the right to abortion, is the fundamental status of the half of humanity that is female, whether they will be enslaved or emancipated. Of course, in the case of the extremely small number of females who have transitioned or are transitioning to males, but who retain female reproductive organs and might get pregnant, they should have the right to abortion and to decent health care overall, without any stigma or discrimination. And in general, attacks directed against trans people must be actively, vigorously opposed. But, in terms of its essential purpose and objective, the attack on the right to abortion is not aimed at trans people. The essence of what is involved is not inclusion, or the lack of inclusion, nor is this about bodily autonomy in some general and abstract sense, a concept which, by the way, would logically include people coming from a very bad place, such as those anti-scientific lunatics and selfish individualists who refuse to get vaccinated against COVID. The attack on the right to abortion is a move to further intensify the already horrific oppression of women, denying them control of their lives and their very bodies, reducing them to breeders of children, cruelly subordinated to men in a patriarchal male supremacist society. Forced motherhood is in fact female enslavement. Anything which waters down or distracts from this essential truth is objectively aiding this fundamental attack on the half of humanity that is female, is undermining the fight for their emancipation and the emancipation of humanity as a whole from any form of oppression and exploitation.
So that was Bob Avakian's new piece, The Fight for Abortion Rights and the Emancipation of Women, which you can find on revcom.us. Sunsara, that gets to the heart of the matter, and I just want to let that sit with people for a second and encourage people who are watching this to read it and to read it again and then to spread it and to get into conversations about this and to write us about it. But I want to end this segment by briefly asking you, you mentioned earlier International Women's Day. That's March 8th. Could you say some more about that and let our audience know what the vision for this is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the big idea is, as opposed to capitulating and letting this right of women be taken away, the right to abortion, to control their own bodies and lives, we have to get out there and wake people up in this society and mobilize them and organize them into the streets to stand up and fight. And we need a fight on a scale that will actually rock this society, that will push back what this Supreme Court thinks it can get away with right now. We've seen struggle on a level like this in Poland, in Argentina, in Mexico, and other parts of the world, where the unleashed fury of women and others has filled the streets relentlessly and inspired the world. And we need that here. I'm not talking about protests for one day. I'm talking about something on the order of what we saw in the beautiful rising 2 years ago against the police murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, saying we refuse to let women be enslaved by forced motherhood. And so we are RiseUpForAbortionRights.org is rallying people and organizing people to become part of this movement nationwide. And the next major throwdown moment to step this struggle up, to bring people into the streets, thousands of people, and to shake and wake up millions more to then go forward further, is International Women's Day. It's March 8th. It's a day, a revolutionary holiday around the world and for a long time in the revolutionary movements in different parts of the world. And here, this year, the RevComs need to be out there with the full mission of break the chains, unleash the fury of women as a mighty force for revolution, but also raising this demand, abortion on demand and without apology, and uniting very broadly and fighting to bring other people into this fight, into the streets, March 8th. Exact details will be announced soon, but we're calling on people to write into info@riseupforabortionrights.org to get involved in organizing wherever you are, spreading the word, donating, and being part of making March 8th a very powerful day in this fight to go forward.
Okay, well, we on the RNL show will be, of course, going deeply into the nature, the causes of the oppression of women and its solution in an actual revolution and moving forward through a socialist society. But I do want to say and underscore the point you just made, that the more, that if, but not really more, if people don't fight this in massive numbers, fight for the right to abortion, yes, up against odds, it's going to be a horrific future. It's going to contribute to just a terrible situation for humanity and for women in particular. On the other hand, if people do fight in their millions in exactly the way you've been talking about, like in Poland and with the Black Lives Matter movement there after the murder of George Floyd, that's going to open up big questions that people have had about the whole system. It'll open up the possibility for people to be able to imagine a whole other world. So, Sunsara, I just want to say we miss you here at the RNL show, and even if we can have you on through the miracle of Zoom, we'll be in touch more. You'll be back on the show, and let's go.
All right, Andy, it's good to see you. And my greetings to everybody out there tuning in. Spread the show.
Okay, great. Thanks. As we said in the last segment, this year is International Women's Day. The RevComs are going to be bringing in the slogan, Unleash the Fury of Women as a Mighty Force for Revolution. And our next segment, which I'm going to have a couple of people from the RevComs with me, people who are part of the tour, we're going to be talking about how the pop star Billie Eilish, who's an artist whose persona and music has deeply touched millions of girls and touched all kinds of people with her integrity and the power of her work. But a few weeks ago, she had the courage to speak out about the harm that pornography does, both to herself and also for all women and girls, in an interview she gave on the Howard Stern show. And what she said goes up against the culture permeated by porn. Music videos are saturated with pornographic imagery and words. And this pornified music is now reveled in by all too many female pop stars. And in this, Billie Eilish stands out for having the courage to speak against the way that millions of young girls are shaped to think that they should want the abuse that comes with boys and girls mimicking what they see in pornography. 2 weeks ago, Revcom.us published an article, Billie Eilish on Pornography and a Culture of Disgrace, a call to all those who are sick and tired of the degradation and have the fury to fight for liberation. This article drew a small storm of criticism from defenders of pornography, and a debate ensued. We want to get into this today because it matters a great deal, and it fleshes out another dimension of the individualism and the capitulation to the world that is today, with all of its brutality, oppression, and degradation. So with this, I want to welcome two comrades, Luna Hernandez and Annie Day from the Revolution, Get Organized for an Actual Revolution tour.
Hey, Andy.
Hello.
All right. So I think just to get into this, and Luna, I understand you worked quite a bit on this article. I think we should start by, what do you say we start with Billie Eilish's statement?
As a woman, I think porn is a disgrace, and I used to watch a lot of porn, to be honest. I started watching porn when I was like 11. I thought that's how you learned how to have sex. I was watching abusive porn, to be honest, when I was like 14. And I, thought I was one of the guys and would talk about it and think it was really cool for not having a problem with it and not seeing why it was bad. And I think it really destroyed my brain. And I feel incredibly devastated that I was exposed to so much porn. I think that I had like sleep paralysis and these like almost like night terror / just nightmares because of it. I think that's how they started, because I would just watch abusive BDSM. I couldn't watch anything else, like unless it was violent. I didn't think it was attractive, and I was a virgin. I had never done anything, and so it led to problems where the first few times I had sex, I was not saying no to things that were not good. And it's because I thought that that's what I was supposed to be attracted to. And I'm so angry that porn is so loved. The way that like vaginas look in porn is fucking crazy. No vaginas look like that. Women's bodies don't look like that. We don't come like that. We don't fucking enjoy things that are what it looks like people are enjoying. And it's how so many people think that they're supposed to learn. It's how so many men think that they're supposed to be. And because in porn there's no consent, like getting thrown around during sex, if you're not interested in being slapped and being choked, people are like, you're vanilla, you're soft, you're boring in bed. And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about women. Women are like, oh, I have to like being hurt to be thought of as good in bed.
So I was just wondering, Luna, how this made some of the young people who you talk to on the campuses or the high schools, and even yourself, feel when you heard her say this out loud. What did that make you? How did that strike you?
It made me feel like almost relieved, like a weight was being lifted off my shoulders. Like it felt inspiring too, that she had the bravery to do that, and what she describes too about it destroying her brain. It was so visceral as well. So not only was it a relief to hear that, oh wow, someone is actually speaking about this, but then there was also like so much viscerality of how she's describing that it destroyed her brain, going along with abusive things in her first times having sex, like that. You could really relate to that. Mm-hmm. Like I was just thinking, wow, like she's literally walking through her experiences. And I've heard that from so many of my friends, so many young women, and that is the norm. So for her to speak about that, it was inspiring, but also very like visceral. And then it also made me angry too, how it affected her, and the fact that, she was also saying like, I hate that porn is so loved. That was like such an important thing that she said.
So you wrote a very deep article together with other people, and really going into this, but then you met a wave of criticism. And so why don't we talk about some of that? What was the kind of things that people said and that reflected the society? I know you talked a lot about the individualism that people are caught up in, and you were contrasting that with what the RevComs are all about, which is a foreshadowing of the kind of movement we need right now and the kind of society we're building. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, a lot of people were arguing that some people, porn empowers women. These comments are endangering sex workers and, we need safer conditions for them. Another person was saying, it might be shocking for you to hear, but some people like being hit. And they're saying being hit during sex. There was, arguments around women should be allowed to make money if that makes them happy. They should be allowed to make money that way, even if it includes during sex or doing sex. So
how did you take that on?
Well,
because you wrote a second article, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We got in the comments first, but I think, we took it on and with Annie as well. One, it was striking how no one in those counter arguments really dealt with what Billie Eilish actually said about pornography. No one wanted to even touch that. No one wanted to talk about how it destroyed her brain, how it's this affects generations of youth. No one was even, wanted to get into the reality or really go there of what, porn does to women, and even women who are in porn, what they have to do. Literally doing scenes where they're being it's hard to say out loud, but literally being throat fucked until they're vomiting while they're being called racial slurs. That's what's happening. And they don't want to, and then they also didn't want to go at the reality that this is a worldwide system of capitalism, imperialism, that has millions of women caught up in the sex industry, that profits billions off of their flesh, that's, rooted in capitalism, imperialism. They didn't want to go there. They're just talking about the women who choose to do this within this country, And also, no one put forward a strategy to how do you put an end to the oppression of women. And every time we did, put that forward, people didn't want to engage with that either. It's just very, very lowered sights on this.
I mean, I do think that there's a tremendous amount of this prettification of the actual, what people actually watch, and there are millions and millions and millions. People talked about, well, there's feminist porn or there's anarchist porn, and you just have to say this is a tiny sliver of what literally billions of people watch. I mean, the porn sites get more internet visits than LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Netflix combined. This is billions of people. The average age of young people watching porn, encountering porn, is by 13 is the average age when they actually first encounter this. This is generations of people literally being twisted and broken in what they think intimacy is they think it's violence, they think it's degradation and abuse. So this is the actual reality, and then it does exist on a global scale, like Luna said. And the thing that's striking in all of this is how much people came at the question from me out. This was her choice. This is what I like. And you just have to say, first of all, your choices are not they just, came out of nowhere. You are shaped by this system where the half of humanity that's female is looked at as an object to be fucked, to be abused, and to be owned. So your desires are shaped by that, and you don't get to and your personal choice, or even what you are into or what turns you on, is intermeshed in that global degradation of women, whether you choose that individually or not. And you just have to say that the half of humanity that's female is more important than what turns you on.
I just want to bring in that this is the half of humanity on a world scale. The question is the horror of sexual assault and sexual slavery and rape around the entire planet that feeds into the pornographic industry in this country. I want to point, we don't have time to get into all of this today, but I want to point people to an article on our website, revcom.us, The Industrialization of Sexual Exploitation, Imperialist Globalization, and the Descent into Hell, by my colleague and comrade Raymond Latta. This is a very important article. It really breaks this down. When you get done reading this article, not only will you know how this question of the oppression of women, and particularly the sexual exploitation, is woven into the entire globalized imperialist system. It's very important, and it will get this out of the realm of what Annie just talked about. Oh, well, this is just two consenting adults. It's part of an entire web of things. But just to wrap up our discussion today, I would like us to go to the fact that, we're making a criticism here, but there's also a different way that people are living right now. There's a different society we're fighting for right now. And even more important, there's a different way that the world could be. I'd just like each of you to touch on this.
Yeah, I mean, one of the points of attention for the revolution in the Revolution Club is we fight for a world where all the chains are broken. Women, men, and differently gendered people are equals and comrades. We do not tolerate verbally or sexually abusing women, nor do we tolerate insults or jokes about a people's gender or sexual orientation. And that is communism. That is the new communism. That's the kind of world. That's the kind of morality we're taking up right now. And if people feel that, they should get with this Revolution Club. They should take up that point of attention as part of fighting for a world where all the chains are broken, and as part of emancipating all humanity. That's concretely. And that is in contrast to all of the degradation and dehumanization that is everywhere, all over the world that, you were describing and Annie was describing as well.
Look, the world we're fighting for is one where all the chains are broken for real. And we have to fight for that and live that today. And I guess we want to say to all the people, the first article was a call and a challenge, and the second article was a very sharp call and a challenge. We want to say to all of the people who are off into this kind of degradation, who think that that's the best that humanity can hope for, who say that, well, what we should do is accept this and just get a piece of it, have some personal empowerment. No. Raise your sights and find your humanity. There's a whole different world we could be fighting for, and we actually have to stand together and fight for that. And we have to forge a whole new morality and a whole new way of relating as part of bringing into being a whole new world and actually overthrowing this system that enforces the kind of horror and degradation through violent oppression in the most destructive ways and in the most intimate spaces.
So just before we wrap up, we've said this before on the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show, but Bob Avakian has done path-breaking work, learning from many different sources on the oppression of women and how it is woven into this system. But even more important, the role it's going to play in the emancipation of all of humanity and how that is so integral to the world that we are fighting for. A whole different ethos, a whole different world. An ethos that, I thought it was I always get moved when I hear these points of attention, including point of attention number 2 that you read. But to make that real, we do our damnedest right now, but we really need a whole different society. And that's what this show's about. That's what my comrades are about here. That's what the world needs. And come on, get out of this stuff that's just got your eyes down at your feet and just accepting what is and finding your place within it. So I want to thank both of you for being here, for opening this up, for writing these articles, and for engaging this struggle. It's one that's not... I think the thing with Billie Eilish also is that, we've been on the defensive about this. We've not been defensive about it, but we've been on the defensive because this is just the culture. And now she's come out, and that we got to come out with the full understanding of where this is rooted in and how we can go about eliminating this and every form of oppression. So thanks again for coming to the RNL studio.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Knock, knock, tick tock. Where you at? This weekend, I want to see you at the Revolution Club organizing meetings. I seen you watching and commenting on the videos. That's very good, but we need to see you coming together with others to wrestle over why we need a revolution, what that really involves, and what it's aiming for. And the Revolution Club is where you get organized, disciplined, to be a part of a bold, fearless force that is fighting the power and transforming people for revolution. In a rare time where this is not some far-off dream, but something that could be wrenched out of this situation we're in now. So come this weekend, if you're on the West Coast in LA or the Bay, Sunday, February 6th. If you're in Chicago, it's Saturday, February 5th. And if you're in New York, it's going to be Sunday, February 13th. Go to revcom.us and find out how to join your local Revolution Club and the meetings that are being held.
February is Black History Month. In 2022, the very notion of Black history is under assault, with Republican fascist state legislatures and governors passing law after law to forbid the teaching of the true history of America founded on slavery, a history with the most vile and bloody white supremacy woven into every fiber of this country. Books are being banned that tell the true story of the lived experience of Black people in this land. Affirmative action, as partial as it has been in redressing the discrimination that young Black people face in acquiring an education, is under assault. All of this is under attack in the courts, with fascist judges, many appointed by Trump throughout the judiciary, overturning laws and precedent. Then along comes Black History Month, and on the first day of the month, chilling reports came over the news that over a dozen historically Black colleges and universities across the U.S. received bomb threats, bringing terror and closing these campuses to protect the lives of the students and faculty. Well, we don't yet know the facts behind these bomb threats. Whoever did this, for whatever reason, was striking where racist violence and terror has marked the life for generations and generations. The liberation of Black people has been central to the life and the work of Bob Avakian, who has developed the understanding that Black people can play a crucial role in putting an end, at long last, to this system, which has for so long not just exploited, but dehumanized, terrorized, and tormented them in 1,000 ways, putting an end to this in the only way it can be done, by fighting to emancipate humanity. As part of Black History Month, each week we are bringing to you a section of a video presentation that we made of the article, BA for the Liberation of Black People and the Emancipation of All Humanity. You can read this article on revcom.us. Today we're going to show you part 2 of this article that deals with Bob Avakian's early years in the struggle for the liberation of Black people. You can go back to last week's episode and find and see the introductory, or you can go on our YouTube channel, The Revcoms, and watch the whole 50-minute video. But here, let's go into part 2 on Bob Avakian's early years in the struggle for the liberation of Black people and the emancipation of all humanity.
Bob Avakian grew up in Berkeley, California. Unable, because of a life-threatening illness, to be directly involved in struggles taking place against racial oppression for several years after graduating from high school in 1961, B.A. nevertheless closely followed and strongly supported the civil rights movement in the early 1960s, and at the same time was influenced by and supportive of the militant stand and role of Malcolm X.
We declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary.
This was reflected in an article that B.A. wrote at the age of 19 in 1962, supporting the struggle of Black people. This article was submitted to the liberal magazine Saturday Review. Although the article was not published, the editor-in-chief of the magazine, Norman Cousins, personally replied, indicating that although the magazine had chosen not to publish the article, he recognized that the article spoke in a strikingly compelling way to very important questions. Having recovered from his illness in 1964, B.A. became actively involved in the free speech movement at the University of California in Berkeley, where he was a student. The central issue of this movement was the right of students to carry out activity on the campus in support of the civil rights movement.
the idea that the university could come out with regulations prohibiting civil rights activity when people were dying in the South.
There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
BA was among the 800 who were arrested during the occupation of the University Administration Building, which was the high point of the movement and led to winning its demands. As the civil rights movement increasingly gave way to a more militant black liberation movement in the second half of the 1960s, BA was strongly influenced by this. He left the university and dedicated his life to working for radical change. As a result of direct contact and discussions with Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, the founders of the Black Panther Party, and getting to know Eldridge Cleaver, who also became a leader of the BPP, BA worked closely with the Black Panther Party from its earliest days and at the height of its revolutionary role and influence. In 1967, BA attended rallies and spoke at one of the rallies held by the BPP in North Richmond to protest the killing there of Denzel Dow, part of the long and continuing chain of murders of black people by police. In 1968, when Huey Newton was facing murder charges as a result of a shootout with Oakland cops, BA spoke, along with a number of key figures in the Black Liberation Movement, including Stokely Carmichael, Rap Brown, James Foreman, and the leaders of the Black Panther Party, at a Free Huey rally held in the Oakland Auditorium on the occasion of Huey Newton's birthday.
I'm going to bring you on now a member of the Peace and Freedom Party who has worked diligently on behalf of Brother Huey. I give you Bob Avakian.
And I want to say that I wouldn't be on the stage, we wouldn't have been at the Oakland Induction Center if it weren't for the courageous people, the masses of people and the leaders who led and participated in the black liberation struggle all these years. Because they're the ones that taught us. They're the ones that forced us to face what the reality of America and this system was all about. And in this sense, we say that not only are black people a vanguard, but they're an inspiration. We don't expect them to liberate us. We have to do that for ourselves. But they have inspired us to begin that struggle to end this imperialist, racist, colonial system once and for all.
BA worked tirelessly to build support, including among white people, for the demand to free Huey. At a Free Huey rally at the courthouse in Oakland where Huey Newton's trial was being held, BA was arrested for desecrating, burning the American flag. During this time, at the invitation of BPP leaders, BA wrote a number of articles for the Black Panther newspaper. At a rally of thousands led by the Black Panther Party on May 1st, 1969, BA spoke of the need for revolution and called on white people in particular to more actively take part in movements for revolutionary change in the U.S. and to support such movements throughout the world.
And let me say one thing to the white people in the audience. Now, you know, Bobby has been saying for a long time, we will not fight racism with racism. We refuse to stoop to the level of a racist to hate somebody because of the color of his skin. Well, that's fine. But I see a lot of white people walking around and say, oh, good. Now the Black Panther Party don't hate me. I can go on about my business. That's a cop-out. And if you act like that, the Black Panther Party will hate you. Not because you're white, but because you ain't taking care of business to organize other people. Teach them the need to support the Black Liberation Movement led by the Black Panther Party as a strong, fearless voice against American imperialism, and to link up with all the people in Vietnam, in China, in Angola, in Latin America, and everywhere else who are standing shoulder to shoulder to drive this vicious beast out of the way and out of the pages of history.
By the beginning of the 1970s, millions of people in this country were in favor of some kind of revolutionary change, but they faced profound challenges. How could this revolution be made? Or was it even possible to make a revolution here, up against such powerful forces of oppression and repression. Which were the key forces that had to be mobilized to have a real chance to carry out such a revolution? What kind of leadership was needed? And what methods and approaches should that leadership be based on? The difficulties in confronting and seeking the answers to these hard questions, combined with brutal and often murderous repression by the powers that be, led many revolutionary organizations, including the Black Panther Party, to split and end up departing from the road that could lead to real revolution.
As we come to the end of today's RNL show, episode number 87, as always, I want to emphasize the importance of your spreading this show on social media and in every other way you can. But this week, I want to bring out a positive example from last week's show. On Friday, the RevCom social media team posted 2 clips on TikTok from the show. In the first clip, I spoke about why so many liberals refuse to call the Republican Party and their aggressive moves to seize power fascist, and the potential this showed for civil war. This video quickly got almost 10,000 views and over 100 comments. A couple of people commented, quote, "The GOP is already banning books, making laws to ensure people don't feel bad about injustices of the past, repeating lies over and over, dividing people." Another one said it's starting to look like Germany in '39. Then all of a sudden, as this was starting to take off, TikTok removed it for a content violation, and eventually it was restored on appeal after it had run out of some steam. But what is especially important to note, the other TikTok was a clip of the compelling, visceral agitation by Lenny Wolff on the show about the conflict between Russia and the United States over the Ukraine that sharply brought a revolutionary answer to this, which you'll see in a minute. This video really struck a chord and currently has over 260,000 views along with 1,000 comments, overwhelmingly expressing agreement. Plus, almost 100 people made duets, which on TikTok is where people run your little TikTok together with them reacting to it. We're going to show you some of them in a minute. But first, we're going to play the video in which I spoke about the liberals whitewashing and downplaying fascism. Then we're going to play, and we're going to close the show with Lenny Wolff's compelling agitation, including those duets. And so I'm going to say goodnight, and I want to encourage you again to spread on every platform of social media at the RevCom's videos and to make your own and to let people know that there is a way out of the madness, and the Revolution Nothing Less show is bringing you that and bringing you the revolutionary leader who we are so fortunate to have in this moment, Bob Avakian. So with that, I'll see you next week on Thursday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time and 8 p.m. Eastern time. This country is hurtling towards a fascist future. Talk of the potential for a second U.S. Civil War has burst into the media and public and private discourse. The Republican Party has become a fascist party. They are shattering the laws and the norms as to how this country has been ruled, discarding even the pretense of democracy for all. Instead, relying on naked brutality and the trampling on the rights of the people. Yet, what we hear from the political and media liberal bloggers and blabbers is that this isn't really fascism and a fascist party.
Trump is more of a populist than a fascist.
They say this is just a cowardice on the part of the Republican politicians who are afraid of pissing off that narcissistic idiot Donald Trump and his fanatical base.
Republicans, frankly, are afraid of Donald Trump.
Wrong. This is objectively a fascist movement and party. Some liberal pundits and academics call this authoritarian. Sure, that's an expression of fascism. But fascism is something different. It is profoundly more repressive than that. It has a program and it fundamentally discards the rule of law and is a more naked, thuggish form of rule of the capitalist imperialist system we live under.
I want surveillance of certain mosques.
I love the old days. You know what they used to do to guys like that when they were in a place like this? They'd be carried out on a stretcher, folks.
But the liberals run from that. Because for the liberals to admit that this is fascism can lead masses of people to question the system that has given rise to this fascism. And more, it has the potential to compel people to look critically at the reality that the normal democratic capitalist form of rule is itself also a form of brutal dictatorship.
This is a war. Whether Russia and the U.S. go to war, or whether, as Vanden Heuvel says, the U.S. will take on China, this is a war between slave masters. Okay? This is nothing but modern day slavery. And when the slave masters fight, you don't side with one or another master. You don't side with my master. You take advantage of the fact that they're fighting to overthrow the whole institution of slavery, to get free. And this is how we have to look at it when these imperialists fight. We're not rooting for our imperialists. We are welcoming the defeat of these modern day slave masters in whatever they undertake, okay? Because that is one step, or could be, if we do our work right, one step closer to being able to make a revolution to overthrow them altogether.